So moving into the second portion, or the second part of the webinar, I'm going to be highlighting lessons learned at a high level of what we've learned over the last 4 years in the San Antonio case study. We had 6 groups that worked. Over 50 people were involved in this project. The first group was looking at data and modeling, and that group that were doing a lot of different approaches to modeling, and we're going to be seeing a couple of these approaches to modeling today. The other group was looking energy for water, focusing mainly on energy technologies that uses less water. Another group that were working on governance and financing, that we'll be hearing from that group. Yet another group that's doing trade-off analysis. This is a very critical element in the Nexus. There's no way we could do everything we need to do moving forward with the limited resources we have. So there are choices, but there also has to be some criteria for picking what choices of technology we're going to moving forward with. Water for food, how do we reduce the water footprint for food production? And the last group, last but not least, is water for energy. How can we reduce the energy footprint for energy technology? All of these groups were working in synergy, and this chart explains how these groups work together. One thing that is very unique about what we're going to be describing is that there are no solutions that fit all, and this was an iterative learning process. So learning some of the challenges early on for these subgroups is defining the physical boundary. So San Antonio, we call it the San Antonio, but what does constitute San Antonio? So we went into deliberation, extensive deliberation. The hydrologists would say, let's look at the watershed. The food security people, let's look at the food shed. And yet the utilities people were looking at the utility shed. So the first challenge we face is how do we define really the boundary? And we end up looking at the region L. Texas has 16 regions. Each region is governed by a certain water jurisdiction. So we end up going with the region L. And then the second, moving on to the challenges, is to identifying the interdependency. We needed to really explicitly define how these subgroups are interconnected, because the water for energy is connected to the water for food, but defining this and quantifying these interlinkages is very, very important. Next. The other very clear element in this challenge is the incompatibility of data across subgroups. So we really identify that some of the data, the resolution of the data, the scale of the data, and those are challenges that was really critical. The variability in the data and the availability of the data. So we end up creating a data hub that allows us to really share all of these data among each other. Last but not least, how do you convince 50 scientists coming together that there is life after this initial investment that Texas A&M did? And in fact, we did land a major award as a group from the National Foundation. But again, these are some of the challenges that we faced and we had to deal with. Next. Lessons learned. Again, it's an iterative process. Investment time of energy, looking into this multidisciplinary work is very, very complex, but it does pay off, and it really builds on one-to-one relationships. Differences in perspective across these disciplines exist, but again, it was worth it. Outcome must be communicated beyond the disciplinary circle, need to be included in the subgroup. This is communication was very, very critical. Maintaining the synergy across all of these disciplines. We did have a lot of town hall meetings discussing and listening. And one thing that also among the lessons learned is we need to really tone down the jargon that we communicate across each of these disciplines, and to tone down the disciplinary gaps that the disciplinary egos that we have. Last but not least is that the process requires time, effort, and multiple disciplines, and we need to be patient to get those lessons learned moving ahead. Next. Now we're gonna move into the third or the second main part of this process, and listening to different. So what you're looking here are within that big framework. Those highlighted in yellow are the different parts of the Nexus viewpoints that we're going to be hearing today, and we're going to be starting with the first of those speakers, Dr. Darjan, Dr. Tabi Darjan, who is not able, she's actually flying today. She's on a plane as we speak, and I believe that Basil Daher will speak on her behalf. Basil, floor is yours.